Giovanni Bellini. If you know one Venetian painting from the late 15th century, there's a good chance it carries his hand, or at least his influence. He was the quiet revolution behind Venice's color, atmosphere, and soulful faces. The man who transformed tempera habits into luminous oil surfaces, who turned altarpieces into serene landscapes, and who taught a generation of painters, among them Titian, how to make light feel like a living thing. From the intimate Madonna and Child to monumental sacred narratives, Bellini's work balances human tenderness and ritual grandeur. Look closely and you'll see how a devotional figure can be both monument and confidant, how a horizon can breathe with a blue that seems to come from within the paint. Today we'll track his path, his family workshop, the altarpieces that defined Venice's sacred spaces, the portraits that sharpened civic identity, and the experiments in color and landscape that remade Renaissance painting. Along the way, I'll point out surprises, a collaboration that bridged generations, an enigmatic allegory that still puzzles scholars, details scholars call perfumed brushwork. These are paintings that invite not just looking, but listening. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating more educational videos like this one. Giovanni was born in Venice around 1430 into a family of painters. His father, Jacopo, and his elder brother, Gentile, were respected workshop figures, and that family environment mattered. Drawing, design, and workshop practice were learned at the kitchen table as much as at the easel. Early works show the imprint of Jacopo's Gothic composition and Gentile's narrative clarity. You can sense this in the early devotional panels and in collaborative projects attributed to both brothers. Around this time, Bellini absorbed a broader vocabulary: the linear precision of Northern painters, the sculptural modeling of Andrea Mantegna, who married into the family, and the local Venetian love of color. Portraits attributed to studio practice and workshop apprenticeships from this period reveal his growing confidence in handling flesh and light. Even a handful of small Madonnas and devotional images from these years announce a new interest in mood and landscape, an interest he would pursue for decades. The family workshop was also a business. Contracts, donors, and confraternities shaped subject choices. These practical ties explain why Giovanni's work ranges from intimate private devotion to state portraits and large altarpieces. Bellini's altarpieces are where his innovations are most visible. Take the San Giobbe altarpiece, an arresting Sacra Conversazione in which Madonna and Child sit enthroned within an open architectural niche, surrounded by saints who feel as present as visiting neighbors. The painting's calm, balanced composition and the soft transitions of light across faces set a new standard for Venetian devotional painting. Bellini often placed these holy gatherings against a wide vista. The altarpiece becomes a window to a world that includes both the sacred figures and a believable atmospheric depth. His Pietà paintings, like the Pietà Martinengo, approach grief with restrained intimacy. Christ's wound is rendered with directness, while surrounding figures are staged in a geometry that heightens sorrow without melodrama. These commissions came from confraternities and church patrons who wanted images that both instructed and consoled. In works such as the San Giobbe altarpiece, you can watch Bellini combine careful draughtsmanship with glazing layers of color to achieve a surface glow that behaves almost like stained glass made of pigment. The results were devotional objects that felt both human and transcendent. While Bellini is often celebrated for devotional painting, he was also a brilliant portraitist. His portrait of the Doge, Leonardo Loredan, painted with an almost forensic attention to costume and texture, transformed political portraiture. The Doge's richly embroidered brocade and severe pose are recorded with meticulous clarity, yet the face retains a psychological depth that suggests personality rather than type. In smaller private portraits and studies, the many portraits of a young man in different collections, Bellini explores individuality through subtle modeling and landscape backgrounds that place sitters in a believable airspace, not a strict emblematic void. These portraits did civic work. They established status, identity, and continuity for Venice's ruling elite. Bellini's portrait technique combined careful underdrawing, a layered approach to flesh tones, and a studied balance between characterization and idealization. Look closely at his handling of eyes and mouth. Small changes in glaze make a face seem more alert or more reflective. It's no accident that later Venetian painters studied these techniques carefully, adopting and expanding them. Not all Bellini is straightforward narrative. The Holy Allegory, also called Sacred Allegory, is one of his most puzzling pieces. At first glance, it reads like a group of figures in a landscape. On closer inspection, the relationships between the characters, objects, and gestures refuse an easy explanation. Scholars have proposed theological, political, and even philosophical readings. What matters for our eye is Bellini's compositional control and his ability to make strange subject matter feel coherent. The figures are painted with the same tenderness as his Madonnas. The setting is rendered with believable, atmospheric space. The painting's mysteries are part of its power. It's both a visual enigma and a demonstration of how far Bellini would push pictorial storytelling. These allegorical works suggest that Bellini was not merely a technician, but also a thinker, willing to invite viewers into a conversation rather than deliver a single didactic message. One of Giovanni Bellini's quieter revolutions was his treatment of landscape and color. In St. Francis in the Desert, the saint is still and contemplative, but the surrounding hills, the distant town, and the shifting light create a meditative atmosphere. Bellini's approach to landscape is never merely decorative, it supports the spiritual mood. His mastery of oil glazing allowed for translucent layers of color, producing a deep sense of space and air. In conversations about his career, the Feast of the Gods is often brought up, a project Bellini began and that was finished and reworked by younger artists, including Titian. The collaborative nature of that painting tells a story of continuity. Bellini's palette and compositional choices provided a foundation that the next generation could adapt. The Blood of the Redeemer shows another facet. Dramatic narrative is still present, but set within a landscape that expands the theological moment into the world. Across these works, Bellini's color sense is less about pure brilliance and more about orchestration, harmonizing tones so the whole painting hums. Technically, Bellini is often credited with bringing oil techniques into Venetian practice in a sustained way. He worked with thin, luminous glazes, building skin tones from dozens of subtle layers. This made surfaces glow. Shadows became chromatic rather than simply tonal. His handling of landscapes as shaded, breathing spaces influenced Titian, Giorgione, and the whole Venetian colorist tradition. Bellini's workshop also trained several important painters. Some finished his commissions, others developed independent careers, carrying forward his lessons in color, atmosphere, and portrait realism. But influence was never imitation. Titian, for example, took Bellini's palette and infused it with a more dramatic brushwork and bolder contrasts. Curiously, at the end of his life, Bellini revisited quieter, meditative works. He remained interested in the human face as an instrument of feeling until the very last commissions. His legacy is double, a practical legacy of technique and pupils, and an emotional legacy, a Venetian way of making painting feel like an intimate conversation. Giovanni Bellini built a painting language that made color, air, and human presence inseparable. His altarpieces taught worshippers to pray with the horizon in mind. His portraits taught statesmen how to appear both monumental and human. His allegories left room for wonder and debate. And his quiet technical innovations, layer upon layer of pigment, a mastery of oil's transparency, reshaped Venetian painting for generations. When you stand before a Bellini, whether it's the calm of the San Giove, the hush of a Pietà, the civic dignity of the Doge, or the puzzling grace of a holy allegory, you're seeing more than a single artist's skill. You're seeing a change in how painting itself understood light, space, and humanity. If one final curiosity lingers, notice how often Bellini lets the landscape breathe around a figure. That breathing space is his signature. It makes his images feel alive long after you've left the room.